The details are etched into my memory, every single moment, every breath, every sound. That night I thought I was simply going upstairs to rest early, but instead, I stumbled into a moment that would unravel everything I thought I knew about myself, about my marriage, and about the life I had built. I want you to walk with me through this story, not as a distant listener, but as if you were right there beside me, hearing the rain outside, feeling the loneliness, the tension, and then the spark of something I could neither deny nor explain. But before I dive deeper, let me just say, thank you to each and every one of you who has subscribed to this channel. Your support keeps these stories alive. If you haven't yet, go ahead and click subscribe, and don't forget the notification bell so you won't miss the next chapter. And of course, after you've heard my story, share your thoughts in the comments. I always love reading your perspectives. It makes me feel like I'm not alone in this. Now let's begin. I am Serena. I'm 36 years old. By appearances, I live a quiet, ordinary life. I'm married, I have a home in the suburbs of Wisconsin, and on the surface, everything looks perfect. A beautiful two-story house with flowers blooming in the garden. A well-kept kitchen that smells faintly of coffee and vanilla candles. A husband who works hard to provide for us. To the neighbors, to the friends who visit, to anyone passing by. It looks like I have the life most people dream of. But what people don't see are the cracks. They don't see the nights when silence feels heavier than any storm. They don't see the way my husband, Richard, spends more time in airports and hotel rooms than in his own home. They don't hear the way conversations between us have grown colder, shorter, more mechanical with every passing year. We smile for others, but behind closed doors, we are strangers sharing a house. And then there was Daniel. Daniel wasn't supposed to mean anything more than a fleeting part of my story. He was younger, ambitious, full of life, and carried an energy I hadn't felt around me in years. He worked part-time at a local cafe I frequented. That's where it began. I noticed him because of his laugh. It was unguarded, unpolished, almost boyish, the kind of laugh that echoed across the room and lingered long after. One afternoon, when I stopped in for coffee, he struck up a conversation. Harmless. Casual. But his eyes had this curious way of holding mine just a second longer than necessary. And I, despite every voice inside me screaming that I shouldn't, found myself drawn in. At first it was small things. A compliment here, a shared story there. Then longer conversations. He would ask about my life, about my art, about the little things Richard never cared to ask anymore. He noticed when I changed something, my hairstyle, my dress, even my mood. And slowly, without meaning to, I found myself anticipating our encounters. Until the night everything changed. That evening, Richard called to say his flight was delayed again. He wouldn't be home until the following day. I remember the sound of rain tapping against the windows, the flickering candlelight painting golden shadows across the walls. I was curled up on the couch with a book, though I hadn't turned a page in over an hour. Loneliness had become so familiar it felt like a second skin. And then my phone buzzed. It was Daniel. He was nearby, finishing his shift, and casually asked if I wanted company. My heart pounded. I knew what I should say. No. But the word never left my lips. Instead I typed, sure. Just for a little while. When I opened the door, he stood there, damp from the rain, hair tousled, eyes glimmering with a mix of mischief and warmth. The moment he stepped inside, it was as if the house itself shifted, alive in a way it hadn't been in years. We sat in the living room, talking, laughing, sipping tea as though it was the most natural thing in the world. But beneath every word was an undercurrent, an electricity, a question neither of us dared to voice but both of us felt in every glance, every pause. At one point, I caught him looking at me, not just looking, but seeing. As if he could read all the loneliness I carried, all the longing I tried so hard to bury. Our eyes locked, and in that silent moment, I realized I was standing on the edge of something dangerous, something irreversible. And this is where the story truly begins. Because what happened after that night set off a chain of events I could never have predicted. Secrets, betrayal, temptation, and choices that would test the very core of who I believed I was. But I won't rush it. Because every detail matters. Every look, every word, every hesitation. So let me take you deeper into that night. The silence stretched between us, heavy and unyielding. I could hear the storm outside, rain tapping against the windows like impatient fingers, but all my focus was on him. Daniel didn't look away. His eyes held mine with such intensity it felt impossible to breathe. My fingers trembled slightly around my mug, the heat of the tea doing nothing to steady me. I should have ended it there. I should have laughed, changed the subject, anything to break the tension building in the air. But I didn't. I couldn't. There was something in the way he looked at me that made me feel seen, understood, alive. My husband had not looked at me that way in years. I finally managed to speak, though my voice was quieter than I intended. It's not that simple. Daniel tilted his head, studying me. Why not? I swallowed hard. Because I'm married. The words felt heavy, like chains I was trying to remind myself still bound me. His expression didn't falter. Instead, he leaned back slightly, his lips curling into a small, knowing smile. I know, he said softly. That doesn't change the truth. I should have been angry at his boldness. I should have told him to leave. But instead, my heart raced, my thoughts tangled in 1,000 directions. The truth was, I wanted him to stay. The minutes slipped by like water. Our conversation wove between light and heavy, laughter and silence. I found myself telling him things I hadn't shared with anyone. How my marriage felt more like a business arrangement than love. How I often filled the emptiness with meaningless routines. How sometimes I wondered if this was all life would ever be. Daniel listened, really listened, his gaze never wandering, his attention never breaking. He didn't judge. He didn't dismiss. He simply absorbed every word, like my pain mattered. At one point, he reached across the space between us and brushed his hand lightly against mine. The touch was brief, almost accidental, yet it sent a rush of warmth up my arm, a jolt that made my breath hitch. I didn't pull away. His voice was low when he spoke again. You deserve more than this, Serena. More than waiting around for someone who doesn't see you. My throat tightened. His words were like knives cutting through the layers I had built around myself. He was right. I did deserve more. But hearing it out loud made it harder to deny the feelings I had buried for so long. I stood abruptly, trying to shake the moment, to regain some control. It's late, I said quickly. You should go before the storm gets worse. For a moment he didn't move. He just watched me, his expression unreadable. Then he stood too, his height suddenly overwhelming in the small living room. He was close, too close. The faint scent of rain clung to him, fresh and intoxicating. I'll go, he said quietly. But then he paused, his voice dropping even lower. But tell me something first. Do you really want me to? The question hung in the air, dangerous and impossible. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst. I wanted to scream yes, to push him away, to protect myself from what I knew was coming. But another part of me, a part one barely recognized, was screaming no. I didn't answer. I couldn't. And in my silence, he found his answer. Slowly, deliberately, he stepped closer, his hand lifting to tuck a strand of hair behind my ear. The gentleness of the gesture unraveled me completely. My breath caught, my body leaning toward his without permission. Every warning, every voice of reason faded into the background until there was only this moment, this electricity, this unbearable pull. Then mercifully, or perhaps cruelly, he stepped back. His eyes lingered on mine, filled with something I didn't dare name. I'll see you soon, he whispered. And then he left. The door closed behind him, but the storm inside me didn't fade. If anything, it grew louder, fiercer. I stood there in the empty living room, trembling, my heart still racing. I pressed a hand to my chest as if to steady it, but nothing helped. That night, as I lay in bed, the rain still pounding against the windows, I couldn't sleep. My mind replayed every moment, every glance, every word. Guilt gnawed at me, but so did longing. I told myself it was over, that nothing had really happened, that I would never let it go further. But deep down I knew the truth. A line had been crossed. And once crossed, there was no turning back.